This happened just a few months back. I've been a priest for over 20 years. I thought I'd seen it all, but now, I'm not so sure. I was preparing for confessions on a stormy evening. The wind howled outside. It was the kind of night when the trees seemed to bend under pressure. The church felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. I sensed something was wrong, and I couldn't shake it. As I set up the confessional booth, the old wood creaked beneath my fingers. The rain tapped steadily against the stained glass windows. It was eerily quiet for a parish that usually echoed with whispered prayers. I sat down and waited. I felt uneasy but brushed it off. Maybe it was just the storm. At exactly 7, I heard something. Soft murmurs floated from a dark corner of the sanctuary. My heart raced. Was it just the wind? It didn't feel like it. The whispers grew clearer, more urgent. They felt like a desperate plea for help. A chill ran through me, like someone had walked over my grave. I glanced around. No one was there. A part of me thought it best to ignore it. But every night, the whispers returned, always louder and more intense. I could almost hear my name in those desperate calls. I looked at the altar, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Days turned into weeks, and the situation escalated. Parishioners began disappearing. I noticed that some looked different when they came to church. Their eyes held shadows, and they spoke with hollow tones. They sought forgiveness for something I couldn't quite understand. There was something unsettling about them. I found myself looking over my shoulder, feeling like I was being watched from those dim corners. I tried to pray it away, but nothing worked. The silhouettes began to appear during my prayers, near the altar, just out of sight. Each time I caught a glimpse, my heart raced and fear rooted me in place. I wanted answers but couldn't find the words. It was like I was losing my grip on reality. One night, I stood by the altar, the whispers filling the church like a cold fog. I felt a weight on my chest. I wanted to scream, to demand answers. Then, I heard my name called softly, clear as day. The sound sent shivers down my spine. I turned toward the door, creaked open, but no one stood there. I felt it then, the weight of eyes deep in the shadows, just waiting for me to ask what was wrong. A question burned on my tongue, but I couldn't speak. The church felt different now, like it was trapping me in its dark history. As the nights wore on, those whispers became my haunting melody. I came to dread my duties, fearful of what I might learn, and terrified of what waited in the darkness. What did I walk into? I didn't know how far I'd go to uncover the truth, but I felt the darkness closing in. I was just a priest, but now I wondered if I was also its prisoner. The following Sunday, as I stood in front of the congregation, unease churned within me. Faces that once felt familiar now seemed foreign, their eyes alive with an unsettling glow. I searched for connection but found only a veil of fear hanging between us. My voice echoed oddly in the sanctuary, and the heavy atmosphere weighed down on each word I spoke. After the service, I decided it was time to confront my fears. I sought out one of those parishioners who had seemed different lately, Mrs. Hargrove. She had been part of the church for years, but her once warm smile was now a strained grimace. I found her in the quiet back corner of the hall, avoiding the glance of others. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Hargrove?" I asked, my voice hesitant yet sincere. She looked at me, her eyes glimmering with tears. "Father, please, I don't know how to explain. Something is happening. It's not just me. We feel lost. Lost." The word echoed in my mind. It was exactly how I felt. "What do you mean?" I pressed, sensing the urgency in her tone. "Can you tell me more?" She shook her head, panic etched across her face. "It's not safe to talk here. You must see the old chapel, Father." At midnight, my stomach twisted at the thought. I hesitated but remembered the shadows lurking at the edges of my mind. "Why midnight?" The whispers grow louder then. "They call to you. They're angry, Father. They want something." A cold shiver rushed down my spine. I wanted to refuse, to stay safe behind my protective barriers, but the voices had already begun to unearth a deep curiosity within me. "I'll go. I'll meet you there." As the night crept in, I found myself at the old chapel just before midnight. The chill of the air lingered like a warning. Shadows danced in every corner as I pushed open the door. The hinges creaked, and I felt a rush of wind blow past me, carrying that familiar sense of dread. I scanned the empty space, heart racing. The moonlight filtered through broken windows, illuminating dusty pews and cobwebs. The whispers echoed in the silence, low and mournful. "Father," they beckoned. Then I heard a faint rustling from the back, followed by a ghastly wail. Panic surged through me, but I steeled myself. "Mrs. Hargrove, is that you?" No response, only silence. I took a cautious step forward, each footfall sounding louder than the last. That S when I saw it. A figure cloaked in darkness, eyes glowing like embers. My breath caught in my throat, and something inside me screamed to turn back. "Why are you here?" The figure rasped, voice like gravel. My instincts told me to flee, but something compelled me to stand my ground. "I came for answers. What do you want?" The figure stepped closer, and I could make out features twisted in anguish. "You seek the truth, Father. But truth comes at a price." A jolt of fear shot through me. What price? The darkness seemed to envelop me, and I realized I was not looking at one person but many, trapped in the shadows. Their hollow eyes bore into me, and in that moment, I understood. I was being drawn deeper into a darkness that fed on secrets, on sorrow, and on the fear that pulsed like a heartbeat beneath my own skin. "Help us," they whispered in unison, their voices merging into a haunting plea. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the chapel into darkness. I couldn't escape their grasp. Someone was in the house, but it wasn't just a ghost. The questions overwhelmed me. Had I come to save them, or were they reaching for me as well? I struggled to breathe in the darkness. Fear clawed at my throat as the whispers grew louder, the air thick with desperation. I stumbled backward, hoping to find the door, but my feet fell against something cold, one of the pews. Panic surged within me, and I fumbled for my phone, the weak light cutting through the oppressive blackness just enough for me to find my bearings. As I turned it on, the light flickered across the chapel, illuminating faces twisted in agony, mouths moving silently, as if trapped in a scream. My heart raced. "Who are you?" I shouted, voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" The congregation of shadows recoiled slightly, but the figure at the front remained unfazed, its ember eyes fixated on me. A whisper crawled through the air, barely audible, yet it chilled me to the bone. "The truth, Father. You must face what you fear most." "What do I fear?" I stammered, frustration mounting in my confusion. I don't understand." The shadows shifted, swirling around me like a storm. The ground beneath my feet rumbled as if the chapel itself were alive and responding to my panic. "You seek to comfort others," the figure continued, its voice echoing through the chapel. "But can you comfort yourself?" Those words hit me harder than the cold air. I thought of my life, my faith, the burdens I bore for others that rested heavily on my heart. I had always felt strong, a beacon of light in the darkness for my flock, but doubt began to creep in. Could I help them when I felt lost myself? "Face your truth, Father," the figure urged, stepping closer. The pressure built around me, suffocating, pushing me toward the brink of despair. My thoughts swirled, and I felt the weight of every confession I had ever heard. The guilt and agony of others clamored for attention in my mind. Then, as if someone turned on a light switch, images flashed before my eyes, faces of the parishioners. Their hardships, their anger, their pain. I saw Mrs. Hargrove again, not just as a frightened woman but as a reflection of all the struggles I had ignored in pursuit of my own certainty. The realization struck me. Their wounds echoed my own. In that moment, the darkness surged closer. I felt hands grasping at my skin, pulling me down. "Help us," they cried, their voices rising to a fever pitch. I was losing grip on my sanity. Everything was closing in. Just when I thought I would be swallowed whole, I remembered the sacrificial power of confession. "I want to help you," I shouted into the void. "I want to understand. Just show me how." In an instant, the shadows recoiled, retreating to the corners of the chapel. Each figure faded into the darkness, their whispers changing from desperate pleas to a single, still voice that resonated. Then face your truth, Father. It is your last confession. Suddenly, the chapel door slammed shut, vibrating from the impact. A new presence lingered just outside, something alive and waiting. I turned my attention toward the door. My heart pounded. Had I drawn something else? Who or what waited outside? I stepped cautiously toward the heavy wood, gripping the edges as I prepared for whatever came next. Was this spirit, whatever it was, part of what I had just encountered? Finding the truth began to feel perilous not just for me but for the entire parish. I took a deep breath. Then I heard a soft murmuring, a voice calling my name from the other side. Father, in a moment of clarity, I realized I wasn't done yet. The true test was just beginning. The murmuring intensified, a hush of desperation that felt like hands brushing against my skin. Father, it rolled through the heavy door, wrapping around me, entwining my thoughts. I hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Who was behind that door? Was it a spirit from the chapel or something worse? My heart raced as I pressed my ear against the wood. Father, help me. The voice pleaded again, almost familiar. The recognition sent a shiver down my spine. I stepped back, fear twisting my stomach. This felt personal, like a call to answer for something I'd never fully confronted. Who are you? I demanded, perhaps more boldly than I felt. Silence filled the air. The only response was the sound of my heartbeat echoing in the stillness. I glanced around the dimly lit chapel. The shadows seemed to shift in the corners, as if anticipating a revelation. Open the door, Father, it urged softly, barely a whisper now. I stood frozen. The voice sounded so much like Mrs. Hargrove, yet it was layered with a haunting sadness that I couldn't ignore. I reached for the door handle, feeling the cold metal against my palm. Everything inside me screamed to turn away, but I needed answers. I needed to face whatever lay beyond. I took a deep, shaky breath and pulled the door open. A rush of air met me, heavy and stale, making my skin crawl. The hallway beyond was dark, illuminated only by the flickering light of a single candle on the floor. My pulse quickened. The shadows danced wildly, and I squinted, trying to discern what lay ahead. Father, the voice called again, echoing off the stone walls. It beckoned me forward. Help. I stepped into the hallway, each creaking floorboard beneath my feet amplifying my anxiety. The air felt charged, as if waiting for me to make the next move. Was it her? Was I about to confront my own failures? As I advanced, I noticed old photographs lining the walls, faded images of former priests, their faces solemn, as if guarding secrets. But one photo caught my eye. It was a picture of my predecessor, Father Callahan, standing outside the chapel with a group of parishioners. A chill swept over me as I recognized Mrs. Hargrove in the background, her eyes looking directly at the camera, filled with pain. Was this the truth I was meant to confront? Suddenly, the candle flickered wildly, and the voice returned, more urgent now. Father, please. My breath quickened. I envisioned the burdens I carried, their faces flooding my mind again, each one a reflection of my own guilt and fears. Then I heard a soft sob, followed by the sound of footsteps echoing from the end of the hall. I peered into the darkness, dread pooling in my stomach. Who, or what was coming for me? I felt trapped, caught between the relentless pull of the shadows behind me and the growing terror in front. I had confronted the darkness within my own heart, but now it seemed it was manifesting in forms I couldn't yet understand. Father, the voice urged, imploring. It's time to forgive. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, the darkness around me deepened, and I knew that whatever awaited me in the shadows would redefine everything. I took a step back, heart racing. But retreat wasn't an option anymore. My last confession was close at hand, and whatever awaited beyond the doorway might hold the key to breaking free of my own chains. With a surge of determination, I stepped deeper into the darkness. That S when I saw it, a figure emerging from the shadows, and with it, the truth that had eluded me for far too long. The figure stepped into the dim light of the candle, and I froze. It was a woman, her long hair falling around her shoulders like a dark curtain. She wore a tattered dress, threadbare and frayed at the edges. My breath hitched in my throat as I met her gaze, a mix of recognition and dread washing over me. "Mrs. Hargrove?" I whispered, the name escaping my lips before I could stop myself. Her expression was a mirror of sorrow and longing, an echo of the pain that had haunted her. "Father," she said, her voice trembling with desperation. "You must help me. I can't find peace." The candlelight flickered, casting eerie shadows across her face. "Help you? How?" The words tumbled out, but I felt an emptiness inside. Even though I wanted to reach out, fear held me back. "You know what you need to do. You've kept your distance, closed your heart." Her eyes bore into me, filled with a sorrow that felt like it could drag me down. "You need to forgive." The weight of her words sank in. I had buried her memory, ignored her pain for too long. My position as her priest had felt like a shield, but in truth, it had become a barrier between her and me, between her suffering and my responsibility. I took a hesitant step closer. "What do you mean?" She shifted closer to the flickering candle, the shadows revealing more of her face. "You think you can hide from the truth?" she asked, an edge of urgency creeping into her voice. "The night I came to you, I was desperate. I needed you to listen, to help me find closure, but you turned me away." I recoiled, the memory striking me like a slap. That night I'd been overwhelmed. My own doubts had scattered my will to help. "You didn't want to hear it," she interrupted, her voice low and filled with raw emotion. "You thought my burdens were too heavy. But you can't escape the truth forever." The candle flickered, and a draft swept through the corridor, sending a chill racing down my spine. Suddenly, the shadows behind her began to thicken, twisting like smoke. I glanced back instinctively, panic clawing at my throat. The shadows seemed to whisper, growing stronger as if they fed off my fear. I had stepped deeper into something I didn't fully understand, and now I felt its pull. "Mrs. Hargrove, what does this mean? What do I need to face?" I barely recognized my own voice, shaking and uncertain. "You need to confront your own fears, Father. The guilt, it binds you just as surely as it did me." Her words drew tighter around me, leaving me breathless. "You've carried the weight of others' pain, but it needs to stop. You have to forgive yourself first." I wanted to deny it, to push her away, but what if she was right? The darkness swirled faster, and I felt panic rising. I needed to escape, but the truth she spoke echoed in my mind. Then, from the depths of the shadows, a new voice emerged, a low, ominous growl that sent a thrill of terror through me. "You will not escape," it whispered, angry and powerful. I turned back towards Mrs. Hargrove, but her figure was fading. "Father," she said, her voice nearly lost in the encroaching darkness, "you must choose, your fears or your faith." With a desperate determination, I stepped further toward the voice, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The shadows crawled closer, and for the first time, I understood that my last confession had just begun. But clarity slipped through my fingers like sand, and as I pushed forward, I realized I had unwittingly awakened something that would test my very soul. I took another step forward into the darkness, trying to make sense of the swirling shadows around me. A chill settled in the pit of my stomach. The growl echoed in my mind, rattling me. "What do you want?" I called out, my voice shaky but defiant. The shadows parted slightly, revealing a moment of clarity. I saw it, an object lying on the ground. It was a small, tarnished silver cross. I knelt to pick it up, the cold metal biting into my palm. As I held it, a wave of memories crashed over me, memories of prayer, of solace, moments when I had guided others. But intertwined with those memories was the guilt I had buried. Did I truly help them, or was I just a hollow voice meant to ease my own suffering? The shadows recoiled slightly, as if they felt my conflict. "You see?" A deeper voice rumbled. this time from the darkness itself. The weight you carry is not just yours. You hold the pain of those you turned away. I shuddered, the truth hitting me hard. I placed the cross against my chest, a faint warmth radiating from it. But I really did. I stammered, the words feeling like a plea. Cannot bear it all. Yet, you do, the voice replied, twisting around me, tightening like a noose. Every stone unturned, every soul trapped by your indifference. I gritted my teeth, my pulse racing. The shadows felt alive, stirring with my mounting distress. I'm not indifferent. I'm a priest. I want to help, but you fail, it interrupted sharply, echoing my unspoken fears. Your faith crumbles before the weight of your guilt. Suddenly, a flicker of light illuminated the corridor, momentarily pushing back the shadows. Mrs. Hargrove's voice came through, resonating beneath the rumble. Father, if you truly seek peace, you must face what haunts you. The past cannot remain a ghost. I thrust the cross forward as if it could ward off the encroaching shadows. It stung against my skin, igniting something inside me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. What must I face? From the darkness, the shadows twisted, resolving into the shapes of anguished faces, people I had failed. Their silence screamed louder than words. I recognized them, all those who had needed my guidance, my compassion. They hovered, their expressions twisted in pain. My heart raced. Fear clawed at me as their eyes bore into my soul. I'm sorry, I whispered, my throat dry. I'm sorry I couldn't help you. Suddenly, in a harsh whisper, one figure stepped forward, a young girl with sorrowful eyes. You abandoned us, Father. You have the power to release us. Panic gripped me anew. How? I can't. You must forgive, Father. Not just for them, but for yourself. With those words, the shadows tightened, threatening to engulf me completely. Then everything went dark. The flickering light vanished, and the oppressive silence closed in. Overwhelmed, I felt a pull, one that threatened to drag me into despair. But I knew I couldn't let that happen. I refuse, I shouted into the void. I will not be a prisoner of my fear. The shadows trembled at my defiance, energy crackling in the air. But in that moment of resilience, I realized something was shifting. Was it hope? Was it my faith pushing back? Then, just as suddenly, a blinding flash of light illuminated my surroundings again. My heart leapt as I saw them, the figures of the lost souls, their features now softer, lighter. And just beyond them, I saw the entrance to the corridor. But there was no time to linger. The darkness was still hungry, still clawing for me. I took off, running toward the light. As I dashed forward, I heard Mrs. Hargrove's voice echoing behind me. Father, do not forget this moment. The truth will find you. My heart raced, the shadows lurking as I stepped out into the open. But what awaited me outside felt more daunting than the darkness I'd just fled. Something was coming for me. As I stepped into the light, the air felt different, charged and heavy, like the calm before a storm. My heart hammered, aware that whatever was hunting me had followed me into this new space. I glanced around the churchyard, instinctively seeking refuge and clarity. But the familiar scent of incense mixed with damp grass was tainted, like the memory of a cherished prayer now twisted by doubt. Father! A voice called out, slicing through the tension. It was Sarah, my parishioner, standing near the chapel's entrance. Her eyes were wide with concern, but I could tell she sensed something was off. Are you okay? You were gone so long. I'm fine, I replied, but the words felt hollow. My chest tightened as the lingering shadows in my mind pushed at the edges of my thoughts. I wanted to escape from both them and this conversation. Are you sure? You don't look well, she pressed, stepping closer. Really? I'm just. Before I could finish, a chill washed over me, striking like a bolt of icy lightning. I turned, feeling the unmistakable weight of being watched. There, at the edge of the yard, a silhouette lingered near the trees, a figure cloaked in darkness, just out of reach of the light. Father! Sarah stood beside me now, her voice quaking. What is it? I think we need to leave, I said, my throat dry. The figure hadn't moved, but something about its presence felt predatory. A shadow of my past given form. It felt familiar, but I couldn't place it. Leave? Why? She asked, glancing in the direction I was looking. Just then, the figure stepped into the light, revealing a face I never thought I'd see again. Jack. A boy from my congregation who had left so abruptly, lost to despair before I could help him. Father, he said, voice low, almost a whisper. You let me down. The words caused my insides to twist painfully. Jack? I couldn't believe my eyes. Was this truly him? But how your silence buried me. He interrupted, stepping closer, an intensity in his gaze that twisted my heart. You took my pain and turned away. Why? I opened my mouth to explain, but the words caught. I felt the shadows moving once more at my back, slithering toward me, threatening to pull me back into that darkness I thought I had escaped. I tried, Jack. I swear I tried. My voice trembled with desperation. But there were so many excuses, he spat. You think asking for forgiveness will set you free? It's not that easy. The air thickened. The warmth of the sun felt distant, and the trees began to sway ominously. Other figures emerged from the shadows behind Jack's faces I recognized. All of them filled with pain, disappointment, and unresolved sorrow. They surrounded us, their presence suffocating. Father, Jack said, his voice overlapping with theirs. Face your guilt. Reconcile. No, I shouted, panic surging within me. I turned and stumbled away, but the crowd of souls closed in, their accusing stares burning into my back. Face us, they cried out, voices rising in unison, a chaotic chorus echoing in my ears. Then I felt the shadows at my heels, dragging me toward darkness once more. I sprinted toward the chapel, desperate for refuge, heart racing. Just as I reached the door, Mrs. Hargrove's words flickered in my mind. Do not forget, but I was too late. I flung the door open and stepped inside, only to find the chapel distorted and warped. The sanctuary I knew now a labyrinth of my darkest fears. I had to confront them. Somehow I had to fight back. As the shadows coiled around me, I took a deep breath, every ounce of courage bubbling within. That's when I realized this wasn't just about them. It was about me. The moment I crossed the threshold, I was swallowed by darkness, not the comforting kind, but an oppressive, alive presence that clung to me like a wet shroud. The familiar wooden pews twisted and warped, stretching impossibly far, seeming to loom over me. I felt trapped in a space that was no longer sacred but turned into a hall of mirrors reflecting my failures. Why did you come back? A voice pierced the silence, echoing against the confined walls. I whipped around, searching for the source, dread pooling in my stomach. Who's there? I called out, my voice trembling. Don't you recognize me? A figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the wavering light. It was one of my former parishioners, Mrs. Hargrove. Her face was set in a grim line, and behind her hovered other faded souls, those I'd neglected or failed. You hid from us long enough. I was trying to help, I protested, desperate as their eyes filled with unyielding disappointment. Help? You abandoned us, she shouted, her voice rising like a storm. The chapel trembled with the force of her words. I recoiled, my heart racing. I was overwhelmed. I screamed back, but it sounded weak, even to my own ears. Overwhelmed? Her laugh was hollow, bouncing off the walls. And that justified your silence? The shadows thickened, whispering my regrets, reminding me of each moment I turned away, of each prayer I did not answer. It surrounded me, creeping along the edges of my vision, making me feel like I was suffocating. I didn't know how to make it stop. Do you think you can just ask for forgiveness? A voice from the back taunted. It belonged to a teenager I recognized from years ago, Tommy. He had needed guidance, yet I had been too caught up in my own life, too busy to notice the storm building inside him. Tommy, I stammered. I wanted to reach out, to tell him I was sorry, to explain how life had gotten in the way, but the words crumbled under the weight of my guilt. Enough! I suddenly roared, fists clenched. I'm not here to be your judge. I'm not your savior. But the words felt empty. They seeped back into the air like smoke, dissipating without any effect. The shadows began to close in, circling like wolves ready to attack. In that moment, fear rushed through me, an icy chill that left me paralyzed. And then, amidst all the chaos, a strange calmness settled in. You don't have to do this alone. A gentle whisper broke through. It was Sarah's voice, standing behind the turmoil, shining like a light in the pervasive darkness. I turned toward her, heart pounding. "Help me," I uttered, the admission spilling out like a secret I had kept too long. "I don't know how to fight this." "Face it," she urged softly, her eyes filled with courage. "You have to face them, face yourself." Suddenly, I understood. The shadows were not just a punishment. They were a reflection of my own fears and failures. I took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of strength I could muster. I had a choice. I could run or I could confront the truth. "Okay," I said slowly, my voice steadier. "I will face you all." As the energy shifted, the spirits around me grew still, waiting for my next move. My heart raced, but determination sparked within. I stepped forward, ready for whatever was next. When I found myself standing at a crossroads, one door leading back to denial, the other toward reconciliation. But as I reached for the handle, something caught my eye. Papers scattered across the floor, scratching against the wood like frantic messages. I bent down, squinting at the chaos in front of me. That was when I saw it, a familiar envelope tucked in amongst the debris. My breath halted. The name written on it brought new questions spiraling inside my mind. I picked up the envelope, the weight of it heavy in my shaking hands. My name was scrawled across the front in shaky letters. I hardly recognized the handwriting, but maybe it was the emotions tied to it that sent chills down my spine. Why would someone send me something here, of all places? As I opened it, a single sheet of paper fluttered out, landing on the dusty floor. The words were shaky and erratic, much like the path my life had taken. "I need you to know what you did," it began. My heart sank. I read on. Names flowed like a river, each one a reminder of a life I detouched, or, too often, failed to guide. "You didn't save him," it continued. "You watched him drown." I felt the air leave my lungs. This had to be about Tommy. I recalled the night he had come to me, full of anguish, seeking help. I was distracted then, focused on my own struggles. I had turned him away, thinking it was for the best. Suddenly, the darkness pulsed around me, its fingers tightening. The figures of Mrs. Hargrove and Tommy loomed closer, their eyes dark pools of accusation. I yearned to defend myself, but I couldn't find the words. They were lodged deep in the pit of my stomach, swallowed by guilt. "I didn't know," I shouted, throwing my hands up in desperation. I thought I was helping. I truly believed it. Silence draped the chapel again. A quiet so oppressive I almost couldn't bear it. Then, as if in answer to my plea, the shadows shifted, swirling toward the corners. I took a step back, disoriented. The paper still trembled in my grip, the truth of it too raw to ignore. Out of the gloom, a memory flickered alive, a day in the park with Tommy, laughing and talking about his dreams. "I'll be a musician someday," he had exclaimed, the sun warming our backs. That laughter vanished so swiftly, replaced by the agony of his loss. My breath quickened, and I felt another presence at my side. Sarah's gentle touch steadied me. "You need to acknowledge this," she urged, her voice soothing. "You can let it out." With a single, trembling palm, I set the paper down on the floor, exposing it to the spirits that surrounded us. "I'm sorry," I cried out, feeling the edges of my sanity fray. "I should have done more. I wasn't there when you needed me." As the words echoed off the walls, the figures halted, their expressions softening but not disappearing. They were not gone yet. They were waiting for something. They wanted acknowledgement, recognition of my failures, but also a chance at closure. "Tell us what you really feel," Tommy's spirit finally said, stepping forward. "Face the truth." The room blurred as tears filled my eyes. "What truth?" The realization that I can't change the past, or the painful fact that I could have made a difference. My head spun with the choices I had made. But as I battled with these thoughts, I felt a shift beneath my feet. The ground was trembling. Uneasily, I glanced at Sarah, and she offered a muted nod, urging me on. Then the whispers rose again stronger, a violent chorus of accusations that startled me to the core. Face us, they demanded. Face yourself. With my heart racing, I turned back to the envelope. I started, my voice breaking. I had to confront my past. But before I could continue, I noticed the shadow behind me grow larger. Something lurked deeper in the chapel, a dark presence separate from those I had wronged. It snaked along the walls, watching. My pulse quickened at the realization I wasn't alone. The shadows swirled and waited, ready to reveal whatever it was hiding, and I was left standing at the edge of terror. The figures trembled around me, their sorrowful faces reflecting my own torment, as the dark presence swelled behind them. "What are you hiding?" I hissed into the air, sensing something primal lurking in the depths. The shadows writhed, coaxing me closer to the edge of despair. "Face your truth, Father," Mrs. Hargrove cried out, her voice breaking through the thick tension. "The darkness only grows stronger when you refuse to see." Determined, I clenched the silver cross tightly in my hand. It felt warm, a tether to my faith, a reminder of the strength that existed within me. "I can't hide from this anymore," I whispered, voice steadier than before. "I acknowledge my failures. I shunned my calling when people needed me most. I carried guilt like a shield, hoping it would protect me from the pain." The dark entity shifted, its growl echoing as if taunting my confession. But I pressed on, my heart racing. I always thought I needed to be strong, to protect others from the weight of my own fears. But now I see it was my refusal to share that burden that allowed so many to slip away. As I spoke, the figures around me began to coalesce, forming a circle that surrounded the malevolent energy. Their whispering grew louder in support, a unified murmur of understanding filling the air. "Forgive us, Father." Tommy's voice rose, sounding less accusatory and more like an echo of long-sought closure. "Now forgive yourself." Tremors of understanding shot through me, electrifying my very core. The memories that engulfed me crystallized the anguish of each soul that had reached for me in hope and had been met with silence. It sunk me deeper into regret, but it also liberated me. Their collective sorrow transformed from a weapon, thrashing against my heart, into a stream of redemption. The oppressive shadows pressed close, distorting the air, now desperate and angry as if threatened by my acceptance. "No more," I shouted, casting away the last of my fear. "I release you all. You're free from my burden, my neglect. I'm ready to truly see, ready to face the cost." In that moment, the air shimmered, tangible and electric, igniting a spark of power. The dark entity shrieked, the sound reverberating through the chapel walls. But I stood firm. "May your pain not linger in this world. I forgive you, and I ask for your forgiveness in return." With those words, the shadows recoiled, howling as they dissipated into the air. I felt their collective sorrow lift, swirling off like mist into the night. A suffocating weight began to lift from my chest, allowing light to pierce through the chaos of loss. As the darkness fled, the figures of the departed became clearer, their expressions softening into relieved smiles. They began to fade, but I held their gazes, honoring the stories they carried with them. "Thank you," I whispered, for what felt like the first time. Then silence enveloped me, the chapel still except for the gentle flicker of the candlelight. I stood alone, but no longer lost. It was then I realized redemption wasn't about turning back time. It was about moving forward, accepting every piece of pain, and choosing to lighten the load. I took a deep breath, closing my eyes for a moment. I felt a lightness, a sense of liberation that replaced the haunting dread. Yet, amidst that liberation, echoes of loss lingered. Who could I save now? Emerging from the fragments of my past, I turned and walked toward the door of the chapel. "Sarah?" I called softly, and she stepped forward from her own shadows, concern etched on her face. "Father, what happened?" she asked, eyes wide. "I faced it," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. "Finally acknowledged my failures." It was haunting and freeing at the same time. But even as I spoke, doubts crept in, whispers from the void promising I hadn't fully emerged from the darkness. I glanced back at the altar, the warmth of acceptance battling the chill of uncertainty. Could it truly end here? "I'm here with you," Sarah reassured me, stepping closer, sharing that light in my uncertainty. As I stepped outside into the night, a gust of wind brushed against my face, bringing the scent of renewal. But lingering questions still clouded my mind. Would I ever find those lost souls again? Would they have their answers? I moved to a different city soon after that night, seeking solace in new surroundings. But often, when the wind howled through my window, I'd think of the chapel with its shadows and whispers. I wondered if the hearts of those forgotten still cried out, if the darkness learned anything from my confessions. I looked back at the place that forever changed me. Some truths are too deep to uncover, and yet I would carry them with me. A reminder that the journey of faith and redemption is never truly over. I had faced my shadows, but could they return? And what reproach did the future hold? No answers lingered, only echoes of a haunting symphony that guided me on a new path.